To me, the most important thing about a family is the foundation. I used to be in the building business, so I understand foundations. Walls and roofs mean nothing unless the foundation is properly set. So what I've learned, one thing I've learned about new families, the primal time from conception to the child's first birthday, is that for the majority of mothers, the most important ingredient for the success of her pregnancy, birth, and breastfeeding is the quality of care provided by the father. Without that, we have a system at risk. You know, there is no other ingredient in her life that is, yes, nutrition, and yes, you know, all of these other things, but it's not her mother, her grandmother, her aunt, or her best friend that has more influence on her. 24/7. Influence, good, bad, or indifferent. And indifferent can be as bad as bad, you know, so that if the father doesn't feel safe and included and know what to do and what not to do and how to be his best, then the family system is at risk. It's a very slippery slope, and then our whole culture then, of course, is at risk as well. Well, as far as fathers and the primary time, the most significant thing is for the dad to let go. Now, that's, of course, the most challenging thing for a man. To put a man in a hopeless, helpless, and powerless place is risky business. And that's what happens when you let go of the ego and the identity of who we think we are. And part of who we think we are is the foundation we grew up with. Men tend to father the way they were fathered. You know, that could be great. It could be really, really bad. But the default setting is to go back to that place. And so with impending birth and impending fatherhood, that causes a man to be disproportionately responding to the situation in many cases. And so what's really significant, if a father can actually, there was some piece of research that showed if a man simply reflected on how he was parented when he's about to become a parent, he raises happier children. They did a 13-year study and found those children were happier. He didn't go into therapy. He didn't have a dad's class. He simply contemplated. He knew he had a choice then. And he can say, yes, I want to do this part the way my dad did, but this part was really bad. Or oftentimes the pendulum will swing the other direction and I want to do it completely differently. You know, now, however, that doesn't come from choice necessarily. That's anti-choice. And so that's not as healthy as it could be either, because the default setting then is still the way dad did it. And that default setting can get you in trouble. So dads have taken up this mantle of nurturing. They have responded, and I don't think it's a coincidence that it's in the same time frame that they came into the birthing room that they've all of a sudden come through and they're now doing more nurturing with the children. I don't think it's a coincidence. And so, but the challenge we have is it's been completely unsupported. Dad was thrown in the room, not given any preparation or support, and in the early days it was mostly this. He was elbowed out of the way, told to stand in the corner, give him the gas and air, the nitrous oxide, because he's probably going to need it more than she is, all those kinds of joke and Monty Python thing and all that kind of stuff. Dad had to weather through that. He had to go through that gauntlet to get to the mother to support her. But the early guys, the Bradley and Grantley Dick Reed and those who brought the dad into the birthing room, they knew that there was a connect. They didn't know about oxytocin. They didn't know about this hormone that the mother needed to produce and that also the couple was already producing with their intimacy. They just knew that. They witnessed between the mother and the father, if they had a connection, it gave her less pain. There was less fear involved in her process if they were connected and he supported it. So he came in, he started doing the business, and he did it with no support. So that's phenomenal all by itself. And then as he entered the family more and more and started engaging with the children more, you know, it's not just about changing diapers. There are so many more dimensions to the family relationship. And, you know, and now 5 hours a day instead of 15 minutes, that's phenomenal. So he's still doing it. And he's challenged. You know, if he's in the workplace and let's say just half of the guys don't live that way and the other half of the guys do, you know, he'll take heat at the water cooler and at the coffee machine, you know. And, you know, the challenge I've had with educating fathers, with offering fathers classes is expectant dads are invisible and they're very private and they don't have a bump, right? So you can't find them. And they don't talk about it the same way women do, and so they're not asking for support. Every time a woman picks up a coffee cup or a telephone, she's getting support. You know, and an expectant mom and a birthing mom, she's doing the heavy lifting. You know, I bow to her, and you know, I will give her every kind of support I can. Everybody should. But the dad, if he's handicapped, if he's not feeling safe and included and knowing what he's doing, then of course he can't give to the family. So the whole system is at risk then. I started the initiative called Fathers to Be, expecting that I would just work with expectant dads, and then fast realized that they were not very accessible. They get 85% of their information from the mother, who gets it from books and classes and her best girlfriends and all of that kind of stuff. But the dad's not reaching out like that. So the conduit is through her. And so then I realized, well, even if just the dads got supported, we still have another element. We have all the birth professionals, the doulas, the educators, the midwives, the doctors, the nurses, all of those. If they don't totally accept him and welcome is perhaps the most important word in this language of the early family time, that if dad doesn't feel welcome, then, if anybody doesn't feel welcome, they leave the room, they leave the building, they leave the relationship. So, it puts the father-child relationship at risk if the father's not welcome at birth, if the mother is a gatekeeper and keeping him at a distance, that sort of thing. So it is so important that the dad finds his way in, gets support from our culture. So one of my goals is working with parents and working with the professionals, but then beyond that, working with our culture as a whole, because this isn't something that can be done in isolation. We have agreements in our culture. The light turns red, you stop. That's an agreement. We also have an agreement about fathers. For example, when I first started this project, I went to Google and I put in Google Fathers to Be, I put it in quotes. I wanted to find out what the World Wide Web had to say about fathers. Google is the oracle of our day, right? I put in Fathers to Be, Google came back and said, did you mean mothers to be? There wasn't a single reference with billions of bits of information on fathers to be. This was 4 years ago. It was like, I was so confused. I wanted to cry and jump for joy at the same time. It was so confusing. How can fathers not be referenced? But that's our cultural conscious. So there's a whole shift in society that needs to happen in order to embrace fathers, acknowledge and support their relationship within the family. But it is extremely trying because guy wants to provide, he wants to be strong, he wants to do all of this stuff to make the family okay, he wants to fix it, well, and particularly at the birthing time, he can't fix it. It takes a huge degree of surrender. At birth, we have this role reversal that happens. The biggest paradox of everything at birth is that a mother is doing the most womanly thing she can. She's giving birth. But what kind of energy is she using to give birth? Oh, great big physical energy. We call that masculine, right? What's the guy being asked to do? He's not protecting the cave anymore. He's not beating off wild animals. What's he's being expected to do is very feminine in nature. Hold the space, do nothing but do it really well. Well, my goodness, did anybody let him know that was his job? He's gonna try and fix something or do something or protect something, right? In a physical way. But that's not his role right now. Yes, he's going to hold her and rub her and things like that. But there's an energetic thing he needs to learn how to do, which is holding the space and trust birth and trust his wife and trust the process and know that they're safe, which is very hard to do in a hospital gauntlet. 99% in the United States of babies are born in a hospital. In England, where I live, it's 95%. So it's a big challenge for a father. So one significant thing that happens with an expectant dad, the moment that announcement comes, honey, I'm pregnant, is all of a sudden, all of his history comes forward and comes present. And it's like the F word, father comes to the back of his eyelids, father. He can read it with his eyes closed. And all of a sudden it's like, oh my God. So one way to look at this is for 18 years, or however long he lived at home, he was in fathering school. 18 years of learning about being a father from his father. Now, even if dad was gone, he was learning about a father. An absent father, he was learning about fathering. And so men have made all sorts of decisions about what it means to be a father by the time that announcement is made, honey, I'm pregnant. And so what happens is there's a default setting. And if he hasn't taken a look at that, done any healing work on it, if it wasn't a joyful, wonderful, supportive relationship, with many weren't, then he's at a crossroad. And this is the point where a guy either has to surrender really, really well, and doing that on his own if he has no background of finding emotional support is a big challenge. But that will come up again and again, and the interesting thing is it comes up in phases. It comes up at the announcement. It comes up at the birth itself. It comes up when the child's 1 year old. It comes up when the child goes to school for the first day. All of your own personal history is brought forward with you, unless it isn't. And so that's a choice situation, but it's only you're able to make a choice if you're empowered to have that choice. And so it's a very important thing that dads take a look at their own history and how they want that to apply to their new family, rather than it reverting to the default setting. The most important inheritance a father can give his children is the inheritance of love. That a total acceptance of who this child is and who they're going to become is the only real thing we can give our children. And so the money doesn't matter, the property doesn't matter, the hours at work don't matter. What all of the research shows that a child wants time. They want time with their parents. And so devote yourself to the child, hold each moment precious, and love them beyond all measure.